Alrighty, fading on in. So, what we're going to try to do here, real quick, is make a rundown of all of the teams that are going to be playing into the main event for First Strike North America. We're down to the final 8 teams that are going to make it through this rest of this tournament. They are doing best of threes, best of ones, um, and we're just going to run through. It's going to be quarterfinals, semifinals, and grand finals. And what I'm going to do my best to highlight with the research I've been able to gather over the last week or so, what the state of these teams are, what the state of these matchups are, what is likely or what looks to be the momentum of certain teams going forward. So the major matchups that we have for this are Envy Immortals, Renegades Solomid, or Team Solomid, Hundred Thieves and T1, and Sentinels and FaZe Clan. This all was actually figured out and decided yesterday during the end of at least the close qualifier. That actually ended with FaZe Clan versus Team Solomid. FaZe Clan losing out to Team Solomid 3-1. That awkward best of 5 when there's only 4 maps in the competitive rotation right now. Icebox has not yet been included as of today's date, November 23rd. So, might as well start at the top. So we're going to start out with Envy versus Immortals. If I can get that page set up here. So, Envy versus Immortals, first round up. The first easy thing to point out is the last time Envy and Immortals have actually versed each other was back in August. And this is kind of the easiest thing I have to point out for most teams at this point, is that a lot of the rosters are actually really different right now, especially for Immortals. We don't know what their lineup's going to be if Shot Up will be in. It will be able to participate. We don't know what's going on with him right now and why he had to leave in the middle of their matchup against T1 earlier in the UMG qualifier. But if anything, hopefully he'll be able to make it back. His stand-in was actually fantastic, though. I can definitely say that. Shout out to, was it Striker? Because Shot Up got replaced by Shanks. Shanks is his name. Shanks TTV. Check him out. You can find him on Twitch. Straight boss. So, now, going into this, the first thing that I want to point out for at least Immortals lineup is that Gangsta and JC Stanley are the only actual remaining members of IMT based on at least their current lineup, with JC Stanley, Neptune, JMO, Gangsta, and Shot Up. So 3 parts of this team have already changed up. The core of Gangsta and JC Stanley remain, but their main carry has become JMO, with their side pieces of Neptune, who's been their Cypher, and Shot Up as another one of their duelist. Typically, their duelists or their other duelist. So this team has actually switched up quite a bit. Neptune, a little underwhelming player for me, but actually showed up by the end of their run through the qualifier. Envy, on the other hand, have a similar story, I believe, in that this match from back in August 29th with Caboose, Mame, Akis, FNS, and Calypso. This team now actually, if I can go ahead and grab them real quick. This team now has Crashies instead of Calypso, I believe. So it's Food, Crashies, FNS still as their shot caller, Caboose, and Mume. So Food and Crashies, just a 2-person change up. Caboose and Mume, Akis, FNS, Calypso. So Crashies and Food look to be the additions. Let me check what their most recent match looked like. So Crashies as their more supported player with the Sova or the Brooch for setup, their initiator, and then Food as their duelist or as their smoker. So there's sort of a variance here with, it looks like Mume and Food are actually adjusting who's playing the Omen, at least in terms of this most recent series against Hundred Thieves, where they actually 3-0'd them. So this is actually the only major loss that Hundred Thieves had in their debut with their current roster. So Envy have you could call it either a flexible or a roster in flux of trying to figure out what they want to do with at least Mame and Food. So depending on how the roster's set up, and it sounds like Shot Up has actually sort of returned on at least how Shanks has posted and made his sort of leave from the team in a way. He hasn't been kicked out or anything, but he stepped in, played the matches to finish out the qualifier, and Immortals has made it into the main event. So that's a huge success for the org as well as for Shanks as a stand-in to just show up and pop heads. So in terms of longevity, which I think leads more to a much more stable team and a lot more game plan that the team can follow up on, Envy has the edge here against Immortals. Immortals, and only have 2 people that they've actually had for at least 3 to 4 months by the time we get to the main event of Flashpoint, which starts December 3rd. So it starts in about 10, 11 days. And the thing is that I at least have more understanding, and I've seen what FNS can do with a lineup when he was on the Orgless team, which placed quite well and quite high in top 6, top 5, I think, over in Flashpoint 1 when FNS with Wardell, Sabrosa, Ye, and Infinite were part of an orgless organization that went from qualifiers all the way up to top 6, went to the playoffs of that CS:GO event. So I actually have high hopes for this team out of Envy with FNS, for him to just kind of whip them into shape, get them a plan, and to see then if the fraggers on this team can pop off. Immortals on the other side have a lot of what feels like foundation to me with JC Stanny and Gangsta. I do not actually know off the top of my head who is their shot caller. Valorant. Let me check and see if I can get that real quick. So Coach Goomba, and no clearly defined shot caller here, it looks like. I don't think I'm missing anything. I would presume it's Gangster or JC Stanny if they're at least maintaining. I would expect one of them to be the leader shop caller to decide how they play it out. Joins. Okay. Yeah, so actually this team's only been around since October 13th. So they haven't been around that long. They've only been around for just over a month at this point. So there's a good amount of edge that goes over to Envy in terms of that part of this matchup. So there's a greater edge for Envy to pull out of this, and Immortals also don't exactly. I think if the right mindset is entered in by Shot Up and the rest of the team, they could come forward into this quarterfinal with a lot of gusto and a lot of hype. It's just very unfortunate that it was not Shot Up in the standard 5 that brought them here. But I shouldn't expect this to be a huge blowout. Like, this could be a blowout out of Envy. They showed strong against 100 Thieves. Where's their recent history? Yeah, their last loss looks to be against Sentinels and Cloud9 Blue, and Cloud9 Blue didn't even make it in. Yeah, so Envy are the strong favorites going into this matchup. And it's perhaps more a hope that Immortals are going to be able to put up a fight based on at least that information. So next up after that is Renegades versus Team Solomid. This one, probably without a doubt, is going to be Team Solomid favored. Where are they at? Last losses, 100 Thieves, Cloud9 Blue, Dignitas. Last time they versed Renegades is close. Looks like it was at least close. All 2-1s. There's a 1-0 there on a best of 1 and a 2-0 there. So in terms of the history of this matchup between TSM and Renegades, TSM have the favor in at least the length of that much. And TSM also, out of most of the orgs here and most of the teams going into this main event, have had the most stable roster since sort of the beginning of the Valorant competitive scene, which I think is what really lends to Valorant roster, which leads into just how much they've dominated next to, they just sign everyone. So there's not much really to go with that. Why TSM has been able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Sentinels in the recent and new history of Valorant. Renegades on the other side with... I honestly don't really know much about this, and I feel they kind of snuck into this tournament. Let's check at least their recent history. Knocked out by Envy, Team Solomid, losing against Moon Raccoon's time in FYB. I'd have to check what is their, let's see, um, RNG. Is that gonna work? Nope. Renegades. Is that gonna work? Boom. Cool. Valorant Renegades. Let's see here. First Science Big Frames Bergie. Released Nerfed. And sign Red Q. So they've had this full roster since early September. So they've had a while. They've had a while with this stack. It's just a real question of how well do they match up and how well do they play out. It would probably be worth the time to go see how they matched up back in the 2 different qualifiers that they faced off against each other, and Team Solomid just beat them 2-1. How bad were those matches? Split. Okay, Renegades took that hard and just clap right back and clap right back. So Haven and Ascent, heavy Solomid favored in those matchups. And I can't say that I've actually ever heard of any Renegades talents that just stand out loud and proud and hard. What's the most recent one? Versus Pretty Boys. They're just getting that team together. And they had to forfeit against Solstice. So this Renegades current lineup is very untested. This would seem to be their first major test. They 2-0'd Cloud9 Blue, which is a really good show for them, and Slimy Boogerman, which we could consider probably like a tier 2 team based on the current setup of Flashpoint. Like all these 8 teams we could call our tier 1, add in like Gen.G and Cloud9 for in terms of posterity and recent, or at least the historical showing that the Valorant teams have had over the last 6 months. But this will be very TSM favored. A 2-1 would be most likely. The best news for either team is TSM's had a lot of matches recently with FaZe Clan, with just going through the qualifiers. They've had plenty more matches to deal with. They've faced Immortals. They had to knock out Moon Raccoons, unfortunately. So TSM has the momentum of having had recent play, while Renegades has been able to just sit, practice, watch, maybe scrim any of these other 5 to 6 teams, as well as, the best thing about these tournament styles is that other teams that may be out of the tournament may either be taking a break, so they won't be scrimming, or they could be scrimming in preparation for future tournaments. It all has to do with what they're really about or what they're willing to do. So there is a lot of opportunity for Renegades to have possibly gotten time with Sentinels, with FaZe Clan, with T1, with Hundred Thieves, and really up their game. So that remains to be seen, but still favor goes over to TSM for that matchup. And then next up after that would be Hundred Thieves versus T1, which I would actually call this my most exciting matchup. Like, this is top 2 matchups that I actually really care about. Mostly because with the inclusion of Steel into the lineup, I expect this team to actually go off. Let me see here. Wikipedia. Let's see here. 100T. Ooh, let's go. Autofill. So, all right. So as of early October, they finalized Asuna and Dicey to finalize their roster. Steel as their IGL, which is huge. For those that don't know who, or at least what kind of IGL Steel is, he's a very structured, very much whip them into shape type of IGL and leader. He frags out hard and well. First time I saw him was actually at Flashpoint 1, and he top fragged on his team next to Smooya, who unfortunately had to leave, and they had to get a fill-in for him. And the team that Steel was on was Chaos, and they did make it to playoffs, but they at least made it to... They contended through, and they made it through the first batch of group stages. So, while unfortunate for Steel in his career, I expect this team to actually show up and really surprise a lot of people. And facing them up against T1, who just lost 2-0 against FaZe Clan, was that yesterday, was just nutty. That was a nutty thing to see with just how FaZe Clan played that out and just dominated T1 by the end of it. And I would expect Steel to have watched those matches and really dissected them and seen what, if it's within their play style, to just attack T1 and just knock them out. It's possible T1 really underestimated FaZe Clan, but all those matches were just for seeding. So is T1 confident in their seeding against 100 Thieves? Do we expect T1 to be, able to take that? So that's a very important question to ask. Let's see, T1. Spider joins finalist roster. So Spider was last in. Again, most of these orgs wrapping it up by mid-October. Days as their IGL. Let's see, Skadoodle, main, yep, Brax, Coach on Fraud, Spider, God. The one South Korean, actually, I've seen so far. Yeah, and Skadoodle. So, this is where I give my advantage to Hundred Thieves because of the steel buff and the level of discipline and organization that I would expect out of him. The greatest deficit will come from his own roster and their ability to frag out and even align within his structure. Because this team could very well fall apart. It was the worst thing to watch at the end of their run and at the end of Chaos Steel's team in Flashpoint 1. Just watch them fall apart where all discipline just flew out the door and they just couldn't nail it down, likely because one of the other players in that team was a former IGL. So you could imagine there was a butting of heads there, quite likely and quite possibly. T1 on the other end is, we would call them a very disciplined team. As for being able to run commentary on how structured this team is, could be quite suspect, because their discipline is good in that they have the signature slow play style where they will run the clock. They turn the clock into a sixth man to try to leverage the, let's see here, let's get rid of that, where they force or apply pressure in a very passive, like encourage the other team to kind of come to them and take peeks and look for them. So when it comes to T1, you need to be highly disciplined or very confident that you're going to peek out into a low information situation and nail your shots. So this will be a very hype match in terms of seeing just how these two teams play out. I'm very excited for this one. Now, the final matchup to run commentary and the prediction I could actually run at for, where's the main event? Yeah, there we go. The prediction I would run for with Hundred Thieves versus T1, I'm rooting for Hundred Thieves on it. And Hundred Thieves doesn't exactly even have, let me bring that back up actually. Is this what I wanted? Nope, that's the main drag. Come here. Okay. The thing is that Hundred Thieves have actually not matched up against T1 with this current roster. Most of the teams haven't. Last time they versed T1 was back in June, back at the very beginning of all this, back at Nerd Street Showdown. So they have not, let's see here. Yeah, T1 Nerd Street. So they have not faced T1 in months. This is going to be a brand new interaction, a brand new matchup that has like no real history to it. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be pretty crazy, I think. Let's see here. Where's the next one? Where's my boy? So next one up should be Sentinels versus FaZe Clan. Sentinels should win this. They should win this. The thing is that with how FaZe Clan showed up this weekend against T1 and against how did that whole look out? Where is it? They 2-1 Gen G, and Gen G was like expected to win that one. So FaZe Clan are surprising everyone right now. They 2-0 T1, and they at least get a map off on TSM. And the exciting part of that TSM FaZe Clan matchup was just how ridiculous FaZe Clan got in their movements around map, where they took so much map control. They ended up attacking Site B on Split or Bind. I can't remember which one that was. I think it was on Split. I cannot remember the images for these maps right now. Valorant Split. Come here. Yeah, it was on Split. Yeah, it was on this map. They actually got so deep into heaven of Site A, they ended up actually attacking Site B from Defender's side. Like they just took over like so much of the map, just pushing through it all. So it came to a certain point in that matchup where, in my mind, and I wasn't watching that final very carefully at the time, but in my mind, FaZe Clan ran out of strats and just started going hog wild with it. Because you could see on the second half, what is it, on Split side, come with me. They didn't get the map 5. You could see how one-sided it got when they got to Ascent. It just wasn't even close. And they would have gone back to Split. FaZe Clan gets Yeah, so it just got really, really rough there. And Split was the only one that they really dominated TSM one. Otherwise, Haven and Bind and Ascent were incredibly favored towards TSM. So all in all, I would expect FaZe Clan to. Oh dear, I got far away from where I wanted to be. So I would expect FaZe Clan to actually lose this against Sentinels. We could check actually. Have they Sentinels? So they versed them back in August, and the Sentinel and what was it? Liquidpedia.net/Valorant slash FaZe. FaZe Clan? FaZe Clan. Valorant. Jason R. and Corey. Solid leaves. So Raucous is the final piece that they added in, and that was back in August. So yeah, so this team's actually had an extra month or two over other teams, and that's where I think they finally have shown up to surprise, because they've been great brand acquisitions for FaZe, but the competitive viability of the roster and the success of the roster has been in question. And so them 2-0 T1 was a great showing. Was just a great sign for just how aggressive Baby Bay got, and he was just on his game that day. Raucous with crazy clutches and all sorts of stuff. Zachary showing up with the op. So FaZe Clan like turned on this past weekend. So the matchup against Sentinels, I want it, and we need it to actually be competitive. But if Sentinels just walk all over FaZe Clan, they're back at square one in terms of the narrative that the entire scene runs on them. So I would call it like a 2-1 Sentinels on it. But if FaZe Clan just come through and surprise everyone and knock Sentinels out in quarterfinals, it would be nutty, and no one would like confidently predict that. But I'm debating how surprised I would be with how they ran in the Sentinels, because also they had to figure out how to get 3 maps off of TSM at the finals, and they're about to have at least another week or two to get themselves more, with more depth on those final maps that they lost against TSM, and really run it back. And they've got a good amount of time to actually get some looks, get some reads on Sentinels, as well as Sentinels does on FaZe. But I think this will be a really fun match to watch. But these are my top two. If I'm going to actually live stream, live view, or VOD review these, any of the matches, it would be these two actually. Envy should wipe Immortals, and TSM should wipe Renegades. But these two have the most potential for upsets to expectation, because we would expect Sentinels and T1 to meet in semis, but either one of these, if they flipped, it would be this would be the most important semifinals. I don't care what happens here. Like Envy versus TSM, everyone's expecting TSM versus Sentinels at the end. Something crazy could happen, and there's no double LM here. There's no losers bracket. This is just one and done, which is unfortunate, but it's going to be its own hype. It's going to have its own energy, its own hype. So that's my predictions running through for this tournament. Envy, TSM. I'm gonna throw out 100 Thieves and to beat T1, and then Sentinels to beat FaZe Clan. And I'll throw those tweets out soon. But that is my predictions going into the main event for First Strike NA.